In 1980, Butch Polston and his wife Kim started B&K Enterprises, a unique costume company that recreates the amazing outfits epitomized by Elvis Presley. Over the years, they developed a working relationship and heartfelt friendship with Elvis's original designers, Bill Ballou and Jean Doucette. This is their story.
I got involved with reproducing the costumes because I was a fan all my life. My parents were Elvis fans, and they kind of passed that down. When Elvis, in the later years, started wearing the elaborate costumes, I just absolutely fell in love with them. Kim, my wife, we were engaged at the time. She came to me and she said, you know, since Elvis is gone, if you had anything that Elvis had, or a piece of memorabilia or record or whatever, what would it be?
Anything of Elvis's that you could have, because he was a huge Elvis fan. If there was anything of Elvis's that you could have, what would it be? And I figured he was going to say one of his cars.
Of course, Kim thought I was probably going to say one of his cars because I was always a car fanatic as a kid.
But instead, he said one of his costumes, and that blew me away.
And I told her, I said, one of his jumpsuits, and she almost fell over. She goes, one of his jumpsuits? And I said, they're pieces of art, and there's something about it that appeals to me a great deal. I had belonged to a lot of fan clubs, Elvis fan clubs throughout the country, and I contacted several of them by writing them letters saying, do you guys know if anybody owns any of Elvis's original items, like one of his costumes? I started researching these collectors and found out that they were wanting like $100,000 for the costumes that they would have.
We searched everywhere looking for a costume that Elvis, you know, if there was one available anywhere, and they were hugely, hugely expensive.
But we had no clue. We're just two young kids born and raised here in Southern Indiana. We didn't have a clue what anything like that would go for.
We had no money. We could barely pay our rent.
So I bought a bunch of books and started looking at books, what little bit there was.
We ended up finding a lady that could sew, because I couldn't do anything back then, and finding, you know, going to art stores and getting little tiny baggies of studs, and we put together 4 costumes to take down to Memphis during Elvis Week.
I was basically the test dummy.
When they were just, fan clubs were just getting together back then. It was a huge success. We stayed at the Days Inn, and he laid them across his bed, and all the fans would go in and out of each other's rooms, just buy, sell, and trade. He was just showing them off. He just wanted the other fans to see what he'd made just for himself, just as a collectible.
This one gentleman walked in, and he was really fascinated with what Kim and I had done on these suits. And he was saying, you know, those are fantastic. And he said, you know what, you're my size. Can I try those on? I love those. Those are perfect. He said, can I try them on? And I said, sure, you know, Kim and I looked at each other like, what? Why would he want to try my costumes on? And he went in and tried them on and come out and was dancing around in them. And he said, man, these things fit perfect. He fit me like a glove. He said, how much you want for them? And I said, I have no desire to sell them. And he goes, no, I got to buy them. He walked around a little bit more and he says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $500 a piece for them. At that point, I felt this stabbing pain in my side, and I looked over and Kim was holding our son under one arm and she was beating my rib cage with her elbow with the other and going, take it, take it.
Take it, take it.
Because you have to remember, we didn't have a lot back then, and $2,000 was like all the money in the world to Kim and I.
So he sold them, and we went out and had a steak dinner and got back home and had a great time.
We come home and paid some of our medical bills off with the $2,000, and we started making costumes. Every time we turn around, the phone would ring and it'd be a tribute artist going, hey, I heard that you make good costumes.
After that, people started passing our name around.
And now, mind you, Kim and I had never picked up a needle and thread before in our life. And all at once, we have a costuming business making specialty costumes. In the early 80s, I wasn't really pleased with the way that I was doing these because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue. There was no books to tell you how to do this.
I wonder if we would get in trouble for doing this.
I was afraid I'd get in trouble by copying these things.
And he was doing research all this time, trying to find out who did the originals and if it was okay to be doing them and that kind of stuff.
And I tracked Bill down and found out that he was working at NBC. It called Bill and we got to chit-chatting and we become friends. And he started giving me a lot of insight about creating costumes for Elvis.
Butch called me and said, could he have the rights to duplicate Elvis's clothes? And I said, of course. And he sent me some photographs of things that he'd done, and I could see that he cared about them as much as I did.
And finally, he found out who did them and all that kind of stuff, and he got permission to do it.
Then I went to meet Elvis's tailor, who tailored clothing for him for many years. His name was Cyril Romano. And Cyril, he graciously welcomed me into his home by looking him up just on the spur of the moment. And I thought, boy, this is wonderful. So I went to his house, and he was taking me through his home, and I saw this big tiger that was embroidered on this big piece of fabric on a wall behind his bed. And I said, Cyril, I said, this is really neat. I said, this looks like the tiger that was on Elvis Presley's costume. And he goes, well, that was the prototype. And I said, wow. But it was a lot larger. And I said, what's a Doucette? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, there's a word Doucette embroidered across the bottom here. And he said, that was Gene Doucette. He's the guy that did the majority of Elvis's costumes for Bill.
Bill Ballou, who's the gentleman who was originally Elvis's designer, who was the one who created Elvis's first looks of the Edwardian shirts with the bell-bottom pants, with the big belts, and then that grew into the classic Elvis Edwardian jumpsuit with the collar and the cape and the kick plate, and that was his creation. And inside of about a year, year and a half, I was running all of the embroidery.
Cyril told me, he says, yeah, that was Gene Doucette, and he did all these things. So Cyril gave me his number. And so I went home 2 weeks later, the phone rang, and it was Gene. And I would ask him questions, and he had a photographic memory. He could remember what he put, how he put it, how he come up with the idea to put what he did. All the jumpsuits basically have their own little stories behind them. It was just amazing to listen to the guy.
they were so flattered that he bothered to get permission that they gave him the patterns.
Bill told me, he said, you know, he said, it's amazing that you went through all the trouble to track me down. And so did Gene. Gene almost verbatim said the same thing. And he said, you know, that you would be respectful enough to come to me and ask me for permission. He said, because most people wouldn't. And he said, you know, that shows real character, which I was just thrilled that he was even talking to me, but him building up my ego was a little bit much, you know, and it was like, well, you know, I'm just trying to do what's right. That's what I'm all about, is doing what's right.
Once we knew that it was okay to do it and we had permission, then we started looking for places to advertise, the fan club magazines, that kind of stuff, and decided to advertise. And then it just kind of took off like wildfire.
Kim and I basically pay respect to these guys like the tribute artist does to Elvis. We pay not only tribute to Elvis through the costume, but to Bill and Gene.
Steve Bender, who was director and producer at NBC, had wanted to assemble a group of people that were unknown and new to the business in Hollywood. And Steve called and said, Bill, would you be interested in doing a special with Elvis Presley? And I said, of course. And so in 1968, that's how I became involved with Elvis. He was sensational looking. The movies that he had made just never did justice to him. Steve and I had a meeting, and he said, Billy, what do you see Elvis in? And I said, to be honest with you, I have never seen Elvis in all black leather. I've seen him in a motorcycle jacket, but I think it would be terrific, and I think that he really could carry it off if we did an all-leather black outfit. It's like a Black Panther stalking a stage. The collar originated with my love for Napoleon, and I thought it would be a great look for Elvis. It would frame his face, and I hoped that most times when you were watching him, your eyes would focus on his face. God knows, I never dreamt in a million years. I must say, I've met people all over the world say, you have no idea the effect you had on fashion. It was a terrific time. It's still emotional for me. to watch that. I got a call from Joe Esposito saying that the Colonel would like me to do Elvis's Vegas opening. And I said, you know, of course, I'd love to do it. I loved working with Elvis. I called Nikki Sherlock, who owned Pizzazz, and I said, I've got Elvis to do. I need your help.
I was working at a company called Pizzazz Designs, which was started by a gentleman named Nick Sherlock. It was a company that started in his garage and then went on to becoming a two-story building. He was originally a skater with Ice Capades and branched out on his own to work on the costumes from the Ice Capades workroom, the icy costume. And he would start doing the rhinestones and the nail heads and sequin work on the shows. Bill would come in with some ideas for Elvis for the jumpsuits, and they started off very light.
In the early years when I was doing Elvis, they were what I call simple outfits. A lot of it was experimenting, but what we found with the lighting guys in Vegas, that white was the thing. Romano was the tailor at ICU Costume. Through them, because they did the ice skaters, I was able to get the stretch gabardine that I needed for the outfits, because that was only made in Milan, Italy. The most outrageous, which everybody got whiplash from, was the fringe outfit. We were experimenting with different looks. I did sleeveless jackets. We did different colored jumpsuits.
It started out with just a few nail heads down the side seam, maybe around the collar, and then there was jumpsuits that had some grommets here, and it kept evolving. Then there were nail heads around the grommets, and then, well, what if we do a pattern? What if we do a little burst here? Or, you know, a nail-headed motif.
In later years, Bill got in such high demand with working for NBC Studios, he didn't possibly have the time to manufacture, design, or anything. I mean, he was just working himself to death. But Bill started jobbing a lot of the different aspects of the work out, and during that period of time, Gene would come up with a lot of these concepts.
There were a number of suits to do, and he said, well, why don't you do one? And it was a dark blue suit. We had some nailheads shaped like little hearts, and I had all different small round ones, and I started putting them together and went, well, maybe something a little Western. Maybe let's do a tribute to Dale Evans. So I had this whole elaborate Western Dale Evans kind of vine work going all over the suit, and it was absolutely wonderful, and he loved it.
It wasn't till we were so advanced into the wardrobe that the fans begun to demand more and more. The only time we ever had any discussion on wardrobe was when we did the Aloha Hawaii special. And he said to me, I really want, Billy, something that says America.
The big Telstar Aloha from Hawaii show was coming up. And they said it was going to be, you know, all over the world. It was a very exciting thing. And so Bill Blue was there. And I went, oh, I got this idea. And I grabbed a red marker, a gold marker, and a blue marker. And I real fast did a gold, blue, and red American eagle. I said, I'd really love to do something like, I just do an eagle. I didn't break it down into nailheads or anything. I said, I'd like to have this on his chest. And Bill went, let's do it.
That, to me, says America more than anything else.
I designed the red, white, and blue Aloha suit with the eagles going down the side, all done out of nailheads and rhinestone. He was a showman, and he loved putting on a good show with great lighting and great choreography and great music. He was going to make this grand entrance coming from the back to the stage, and he was wearing a floor-length version of the eagle cape.
Elvis walked out on stage and fell over. The cape was so heavy that he couldn't handle it.
Well, they decided it was just too heavy. He couldn't do it. They didn't want him to do it. He'd be too tired to sing.
With all the stones and everything and the length that it was heavy. But I can see Elvis laughing as he's falling backward.
Bill was smiling, man. He liked that.
So it never got on camera. But it's in Graceland. It takes up a whole wall. It's really kind of wonderful. He got into this thing of giving the belts. He wore the eagle suit a lot. It was one of his favorite suits. The original eagle suit had the eagles and here and there, and it had the belt. And then he gave the belt away to someone, that's what I was told, and we had to come up with another, so we did another belt. Then we did 2 more belts. Then he loved the suit so much, he wore it all the time, that we needed to do a replacement suit so at least one could go to the cleaner and he'd have the other one. Only they kept giving the belts away. So what I figured was, okay, how about underneath the belt we do more eagles? So when he takes the belt off, at least there's something there. But that didn't seem to be enough because he started throwing the capes in the audience. And the capes, I'm surprised he didn't kill somebody. The darn things weigh 50 to 75 pounds. I was shocked. Well, Bill called, yeah. Oh, you throw a belt away again? No, cape. So we wound up doing 3, 4 capes. It was a joke. If I wanted to have a prized possession, what it would be is, I know exactly what it was. It's an 8 by 8 by 11 piece of Pizzazz Designs stationery. It's a Pizzazz Designs, and I turned it on its side, and like I said, it was a yellow jumbo marker, yellow, red, and blue. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was doing like this, and it was an eagle. And I would rather have that than any original sketch I did or anything, because that's such a key turning point in my life. That one piece of paper, I'd give anything in the world to find that piece of paper.
I never believed it would be a business. For probably the first 10 years of making costumes,
I had no intentions of being in business making Elvis costumes. I was a dirt digging construction worker that lived in a rundown house on the river.
so up until about 1995, it was still, trying to decide, do we want to do this as a full-time business or not?
I don't remember this ever not being a part of my life. It's always been around me, in my house. It's where I work. It's always been a part of my life, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't know what life would be like without this in it.
He's an artist. Our son is an artist. He loves making costumes, he loves music.
I'm actually really close with Gene. He's my godfather. Everything that I do here, Gene taught me how to do. Well, my parents taught me how to do it first, and then Gene said, no, come here. This is the way I do it. Gene's also been a big inspiration as far as like appreciation for the arts and just using my imagination. Watching it grow, that was surreal because I wouldn't have thought it would have lasted until I was an adult.
Provide some of the biggest Hollywood stars with their movie wardrobe. Butch is joining us here live this morning. Good to see you, Butch.
I see.
Replicas of Elvis Presley's incomparable costumes continue to be made in this small shop. Not in Hollywood, not Las Vegas, not even Memphis, but in Charlestown, Indiana. B&K Enterprises began in 1980 when Butch and Kim Polston made a couple of jumpsuits and took them to a gathering of Elvis fans and impersonators near Graceland. The truth of the matter is, had not Elvis left the building permanently 25 years ago, there'd be no Elvis impersonator industry. But as long as there is one, B&K Enterprises will be taking care of business, baby.
More Elvis impersonators come through Kentuckiana than just about anywhere other than maybe Graceland.
From a small workshop in Charlestown, Indiana, B&K faithfully makes the King's embroidered outfits, bedecked with stones, sequins, and studs, under the guidance of Gene Doucette, the very designer who made the originals for Elvis through his Las Vegas years. Who buys them?
Impersonators, they like to be called tribute artists. Then there's also fans. Fans will buy a lot of our belts and capes to display on their walls. And of course, there's the celebrities.
But in Charlestown, they are taking care of business, you might say.
Yes, they are. Impressive work, though.
Yeah, they really do a nice job.
In the 90s, when Gene came in here, he taught Kim how to use all these embroidery machines to do all this type of intricate embroidery work.
Kim has also been my best student. I taught her how to run the chain stitch machines and the embroidery machines and so on, and she picked it up like nobody's business. She's a little artisan.
Kim was doing the embroidery for a number of years, and then in 1999, when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, things started falling apart. We weren't really sure how the treatments were going to affect her.
When I got sick, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, he didn't tell me, but he started having panic attacks. and he would walk across the room and pass out.
I was devastated.
My husband, my mother, and both my sisters all ended up on antidepressants all at the same time.
Truthfully speaking, it caused me to have a nervous breakdown. And then I ended up on all kinds of antidepressants, got hooked on Valium, which I didn't have a clue what Valium even was.
One of the hardest things about my situation with Butch and Kim and our relationship was when Kim had her bout with cancer and had to go through all the chemotherapy and so on. I think I've told people a number of times that one of the greatest things about this is that I've got two of the closest friends I've ever had in my life, and they're dear to me and their family.
Jean and Kim are really close too. I mean, they're like brother and sister.
While she was going through this, it became hard for her to be able to sit at the machine and, you know, be in a certain position for so long and it was going to affect business in a lot of ways.
He said, you know, you kids have got enough on your plate to deal with. He said, send me the patterns and I'll just take over doing the embroidery work.
Chemotherapy, surgery, radiation treatments, the whole 9 yards, and did fine. Thanks to a wonderful doctor, Dr. Renato LaRocca. He saved my life. It was stage 3 breast cancer, and he pulled me through it, and I had, but one good thing, he never talked about stages until after it was all over with.
It was just a really, really soul-turning event in my life with her, because we're closer than just husband and wife. This is my business partner, my best friend, and everything else. Mother of my son, and so it was really a difficult thing to go through.
I may be extremely lucky, you know, a lot luckier than a lot of people maybe would be, but I have had no recurrences, and it's been 7 years now, so I've been very lucky. I thank God and thank my doctors.
We get to be even closer now, work-wise and personally.
And all my family is back to normal again. They're all doing well. They recovered from all their scare and depression, and they're doing great now too. So, and Butch is doing well. He's highly stressed, but he takes good care of me, so he's doing good.
When I did these, I never expected them to be reproduced. They were a one-of-a-kind thing. It was never supposed to be, well, it comes in large, extra large, and order from the catalog. I never knew any of that was going to happen.
I was in Las Vegas. This was probably the 80s. The Colonel was there at the Hilton. I did ask the Colonel. I went up and shook his hand, and I said, told him what I did, and he said, oh, I've heard about you doing these type of things from some of these tribute artists. And I said, yeah, and I said, you know, Colonel, when I started doing this, there's only 12 tribute artists worldwide. He said, well, you've pretty much lent a hand to doing this then, haven't you? And I thought, oh boy, what's he going to cut into me about? And he said, you've got permission from Bill Blue and all, and Bill's a wonderful guy, and we love Bill. Elvis was very loyal to Bill, and I don't see anything that Elvis would be upset. He'd probably be really pleased that you're doing it. And I was really taken back by that. I was really touched too.
When you think Elvis jumpsuit, usually in the same sentence somebody says B&K Enterprises.
This thing to you know, get a jumpsuit because that's your, you know, that's your business, that's what you want to do, and you come to find out that they're not your normal business people. They're really great people to deal with, and they don't have an attitude or anything like that.
A lot of these guys were not even around when we started, and it's amazing to me that, you know, they were children.
I met Butch and Kim at the Elvis Week in Graceland in 1997, and I just saw all their costumes and everything, and we're from the same area, so we just talked, and for 10 years I probably talked to him 3-4 times a week. You know, none of it's really business, just we became friends because, you know, they're just great people, and, you know, they got a great product. And after I got back to Vegas and I started watching some Elvises, you know, you start really paying attention to the wardrobe, and their stuff is you know, just top of the line. When you put it on, I mean, you feel like Elvis just when you walk out, because you're like, hey, this is the suit, you know. I have a couple of jobs today. I already did one this morning at Caesar's Palace. I do a lot of corporate events now. I had a show on the Strip for a few years, but then I started working for the city of Las Vegas as one of their Elvises they send around the world promoting Las Vegas.
So here we are in Las Vegas. This is one of my favorite cities in all the world, but this is one of the other places besides Memphis, Tennessee, where we got our start. This is where the majority of our tribute artists are that we do these costumes for. Actually, our first experience was done right directly behind you. It's the Mandalay Bay, but that used to be the Hacienda, and that's where we did our first show ever in Las Vegas, Nevada. One of the greatest cities in the world, especially for Elvis, because this is one of the places, this is kind of like the city Elvis built at one period.
How can you create charisma, or how can you create magic? I tend to see the show as a movie, as a three-dimensional movie, you know what I mean? For 2 hours you're sitting there in the chair and you watch that guy growing up and getting confidence in himself and changing and gaining weight and gaining confidence in himself and changing his looks and his attitude and his voice even changes, you know? And I think that's an art form that we're creating.
Got a lot of nerve, baby. Tonight.
They were looking for the soul of Elvis. They were looking for the essence of Elvis, something that would create the illusion that the audience would experience what it was like to be attending an Elvis concert at a certain era of his life.
And I said, well, Colonel, let me ask you something. What do you think of tribute artists as a whole? And the Colonel he was an older man, but he was still real sharp on top of his game, and he leaned back and he looks and he goes, well, I just have one thing to say and I won't comment any further. If Elvis was alive today, Elvis couldn't do Elvis.
It just kept evolving. The suits became more and more pieces of artwork and elaborate and had themes. My nickname for this is kitchen sink suit, because what had happened was, by doing all the other suits, I was accumulating, well, there's 6 of these and there's 12 of those, and this whole drawer was filling up. And I didn't want them to start complaining, well, you're leaving all this stuff and we're not gonna let you buy anything more either. So I designed this suit to clean the drawer out, is actually what happened. So this is the kitchen sink suit, and I got rid of all the jewels, which left me opening to, now I can go shopping again. Well, the robe was kind of a fun project because it was a gift to Muhammad Ali from Elvis. And I think around that time, that's when Elvis was, on his concerts, was wearing a lot of what I called the burst suits, where all these, there was a red one, a blue and yellow one, and there were all these different types of jeweled bursts all over his body. And so I think he was wearing one of those when he met Ali or something like that. At any rate, Bill Ballou had come in and said he wants to give Ali this robe, and would you do the robe up?
He was a fan of Muhammad, and he asked me to do the robe. Romano actually made it at IC Costume, and he presented it to him.
Meeting Elvis was a big thrill for me, you know, because I've been an Elvis fan all my life. We went up to his suite. Gene Kilroy is still in Vegas now, and he's the guy that set it up to go see Elvis Presley. And you know what? He gave Muhammad the robe. Magnificent, you know what I mean? And he only wore it once. Oh, let me tell you, it was such a thrill for me, and I met all the nice people. It was a great night. Muhammad is the nicest human being God ever put on this earth. I'm his voice. I never got a word in edgewise this whole fistic life, okay? And a lot of guys try to follow him, but you can't copy Muhammad. It's a mistake.
Oh my goodness, look at this. Wow, talk about memory. This is quite an awesome room, you know, it's so visual, and then it's all of a sudden this standing here. It's quite amazing, and it's a big memory rush too, because I had totally forgotten so many of the details about the lettering on the back of the robe that was made up all of these beautiful blue pearlized nail heads. Very limited edition. And the only places those nail heads were ever used were on the back of Ali's robe and Elvis's eagle costume, the Aloha suit. There was just enough to do that amount of costumes, and that's it. They exist on no other costumes in the world. There was a group of suits that made a big jump in the evolution of the suits. The thread embroidery creating now pictures, and then all of the punch-on stuff there to highlight it and give it life and to accent things.
Elvis did have a favorite suit. His favorite suit was actually the peacock suit. Elvis loved that suit, and that was actually a rough creation from something Gene came up with, but a lot of people associate that suit with the NBC peacock.
I've only had with Elvis one throwaway. It was the next big part of the evolution, this group, and I was pushing further than I had pushed before with the embroidery. And I really wanted them all to be special. And I thought to myself, hey, you know, what would be cool would be to do like an astrological one. But I couldn't remember what sign he was. I didn't know what his birthday was, and I didn't know what sign to use. So I said, okay, let's do Sagittarius because it's dramatic looking, you know, because it's half man, half horse, and running out of the clouds, and it works great on the chest, just to get the idea across of going that route. I didn't know he wasn't a Sagittarius. All the time I've been doing the suits, that's the only time he didn't like something I came up with, so I figured it was worth it. And the Indian Chief suit is like, it was one of the first ones I got to play around with. Like, as I said before, I like American Indian art. I've always appreciated loom beading like the Indians used to do it. And this one had a trick to it because I couldn't actually attach real feathers to it. So what I decided to do was embroider feathers and then do shading on them and so on, that when hopefully when you stand back 5–10 feet or from the stage, that they look like real feathers. And turns out it worked, because people thought originally those were real feathers until he moved around and they didn't move. But it was a fun suit to do. I have a love for animals. I wanted to try to get animals involved in it somehow. So what I decided to do was go for an animal that Elvis might think would be daring, exciting, and macho, so I picked a tiger. And then I had a little trouble drawing it for the first week. I threw out endless sketches because they kept looking like the Ringling Brothers logo, you know, with the diving tiger. So changed it around, and finally I came up with the one that I liked. The whole process of how all the suits are done with the chain stitch embroidery, and even with the punch-on embroidery on the originals, is we use a tracing paper, a high-quality vellum. Basically, the suits are sent to me by Butch and Kim here in Los Angeles, and they're usually in one piece with the center back closed. And what I do is apply the patterns that I've prepared and I've drawn and transfer them over onto the suit. And then from then on, in a lot of the cases, it's what my eye picks up and what I decide to do with the machining as it's being run. A lot of them aren't just ABC done. There's little highlighting and textures I do. I change the pattern according to people's sizes. And I try to make each one be technically correct for that customer. I finish off the design in center back. It gets sent back to Butch and Kim. And now it's their problem to go ahead and start sewing it together, lining it, putting on the rhinestones, finishing it off, and getting it out on time for the customer, which I usually add just a little bit of pressure to what they have to do because I take a little bit too long to do what I do. But they're very good about it, and they forgive me every time. The Phoenix story, the amazing Phoenix story. I wanted to do a jungle suit. I wanted zebras and elephant stampedes on the back and gorillas and boa constrictors. I was just going to go crazy with it, you know, with jungle everywhere. And so just to get the idea going, I had done a zebra, a black and white zebra, the head and the ears and the mane standing up and the neck coming down. We sent off all of the swatches to Elvis, and then they come back with the call was, he loves all of these except this one. He thinks the bird has very funny feet. And I go, what? I couldn't understand what he's talking about. Then I realized if you turn the zebra head upside down, it sort of looked like a bird, and it did have funny feet. Those were the ears, and what was the neck and the mane he thought was a wing. If you turn it upside down, you get an impression of this was the nose and the eyes, and there's the ears from the zebra, and that was his neck. So then I had to redesign the whole thing to become a bird, and so it became the Phoenix, and who knew? But he was happy, and as a matter of fact, he loved this suit so much that it was done white on black, black on white. There's a red one, teal, a navy blue, and a black. Anyway, it worked. Mistakes happen. Sometimes they're profitable. What can I say? There's the Arabian. This was fun to do. This is very intricate. You can see the detail work in the machining on that one. If we reproduce this, this one's going to be a bit murder on my head. But this is one of the, was in the batch with the sundial. This is one of that group of sketches. where we were making that next jump. He wore this suit a lot. He seemed to like it a lot. This is a good picture, Mikey. This shows that nail head off that I told you about. See? That's a ring nail head, then that's thread inside, then a 20. I'd love to find this. I'm not looking forward to drawing out again, I can tell you right now. That one's, but it'd be pretty. Yeah. It's on the list. Apparently, there's also a little controversy about how many sundials actually existed. There was only one. I only made one. There could only be one. It was always one of his favorites and most impressive suits when he'd walk out on stage with it. When the sundial would be hit by the lights and it would frame his face and his shoulders, it was very, very impressive. And he was very comfortable with the suit. It was like an old friend to him. And especially later on as he started to gain weight, it was a suit that could very easily be let out a tiny bit, and he had that comfort, again, of an old friend and a piece of equipment that he had become used to.
It's crazy around here, a lot of times.
So this is a recreation of a very famous belt worn by Elvis in 1969. It was called the International Championship Belt. It was manufactured by a gentleman named Edward H. Bohan, and this was probably one of Elvis's most prized pieces, and so we recreated this as close as possible for the tribute artist. These are large stones, but the original ones that were used in Elvis's were precious gemstone chips. This was originally done on a sterling plate and hand carved, and then you would take sheets of gold and lay over it and melt the sheets of gold. It was not plated, it was melted gold over top of it. So if you're ever in Graceland and you see this, sometimes you might take a look at it. At one angle and see it looks gold. At another angle you'll see it looks silver, and that's the reason why. A lot of collectors have said that if this was actually out in public domain and it ended up at an auction, it could easily bring $500,000.
This will be the feet. Get one on each side, and then it'll get one at the head. And there'll be a stone in here, and it'll have stars around it too. So it's a lot of work. But it's really nice when you get to see it on stage or, you know, in a movie or something. Think, like, wow, I did that. Looks good. Takes a lot of patience.
Okay, this is the Aloha Eagle Cape. It was originally known as the Liberty Eagle Cape. This is probably my favorite suit because it is so patriotic and a very heavy cape, but it's a very, very beautiful piece. It's a piece of art.
I'm into collecting Elvis Presley jumpsuits, these costume belts, these jewelry, and his personal effects. That's a love of mine. That's something I love to do. He started doing the Vegas thing, and he started doing the live performances. He started wearing these costumes, and I'd get to look at these costumes and go, "Ain't them wild?" I counted the other day. I think I have about 47 of his costumes. This cape was actually made for his 1973 Aloha Special. And actually, I don't know the actual weight of this thing. I'm going to say maybe 30 pounds. And when Elvis tried it on, the story I have that it pulled him backwards, and I tried it on myself, and it does. You can't even hardly move. It throws you off balance. So I had this made about 3 years ago. Took about 2.5 months to get it, and they made it here at B&K Enterprises. When they put something together at B&K, I mean, every stud goes at a certain place. Everything has got its place, and they're very professional. I could take this cape and lay it beside the original cape of Elvis Presley's, and it's identical. What we have here, we have what's called the Ali robe. And Elvis Presley was a friend of Muhammad Ali, so we had him a robe made up. And this robe is identical to this one. The only difference to this robe and Ali's robe is the wording on the back. And it's got people's choice on that. I actually had my initials put on this to more personalize it.
These are two of the costumes that were requested for the movie Bubba Hotep, starring Bruce Campbell. These were Bruce Campbell's suits for different shot values. They had different colors made. But these are the actual two costumes here, two of the numerous costumes that we made for the movie. This belt is a belt that is one of two belts that I sent to California. We were involved with the manufacturing, but the costumes for 3,000 miles to Graceland. And while they had this out there, they played around in the belts and tried them on. And when I got the belt back, it was like the shield was gone, but all the chain was hanging down. And I thought, I wonder what happened here, you know. And then when I opened it up, they actually all autographed the back of the belt for me, and when they sent it back with their fittings. Kim and I made 26 or 27 costumes for that. We received a call from Elvis Presley Enterprises. We've got the Prime Minister of Japan coming to Graceland, and the President of the United States, George Bush. I think Lisa Marie, if I'm not mistaken, had this idea that it would be appropriate to present the Prime Minister of Japan this uniquely American symbol, which is the eagle. Usually it'll take about 60 to 80 man-hours to do a cape and a belt, and they called us kind of at the last minute and said, we need these things. I think it was like within a week.
You know, when you're told it's for the President of the United States, you generally want to make sure that you get it done.
Me and Kim would do a lot of the work in the evenings after everybody'd leave till about 10 or 11 o'clock at night so we could get this done. But it was very important. You know, we're very proud to be Americans, and we wanted to make sure that the Prime Minister had something uniquely American. He was an Elvis fan, and as I said, nothing says America like the eagle.
When President Bush and Prime Minister Kwazumi came through Graceland, that was a big, big experience. Those of us who went on the tour with them, for some reason, weren't really nervous about it. I guess it's because when you work at Graceland, you're associated with the most famous person you can think of. And we've played host to people from all walks of life and all parts of the world and all levels of celebrity. And this was the first time we had had a sitting U.S. president visit Graceland and the second most powerful world leader coming in. But they just acted like regular guys. The Prime Minister really and truly is a major Elvis fan, so we have no trouble relating to an Elvis fan of any station. You know, there's a real comfort level there. But we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. But there were those moments where you go, well, I'm walking along here chatting with the President and the Prime Minister. You know? wow, this is a good job.
The dream, the impossible dream. My dream came true.
He certainly enjoyed getting to put on Elvis's real sunglasses in the jungle room. Now those he walked away with were the souvenir glasses that we gave everybody who was part of the visit that day. But he did get to wear the real thing in the jungle room for a few moments. The replica cape and belt were presented later on and not part of the official gift giving on the day of. So I'm sure he liked it though.
This is it. This is where it all started, where everything for B&K Enterprises started. When you speak about these costumes, this is where I got my beginning studying these costumes before I actually got involved with Gene Doucette and Bill Ballou on these. There's a nice retrospect of the different garments and time period.
I started here as a tour guide in May of 1983, and then I just stayed and grew up with the company. So my current title is Director of Media and Creative Development. I handle our relationship with the news media and to a degree the entertainment media. I've worn a lot of hats through the years, including doing archives and exhibits. So it's just never been boring, not a day, and still love it after more than 23 years. BK's done such a wonderful job with replicating Elvis's costumes and maintaining a stellar level of quality and authenticity. So really, I think the sky's the limit. There's just an endless amount of ideas of things we can do together. I think a lot of people walk away from here far more impressed with him than they expected to be. And I know a lot of people who come in casually interested feel a very strong connection with him when they leave. There's something about this place because it was Elvis's private corner of the world, and his spirit, his mark is very much present on the property.
I'm the director of archives, so I take care of all of the displays and exhibits. I'm in charge of the upkeep of the mansion, as well as the stuff that we have in our storage facilities, the things that are not on display. About 1/10 of our collection is actually on exhibit, the rest is in storage. We actually have several off-site storage, and we have a climate-controlled building on property where we store all of our temperature-sensitive items.
Can you take us to the secret bunker?
But I'd have to kill you if I did that. I'll take you to the secret bunker, but that'll be the last thing you see.
Films, photographs, documents, all of our wardrobe is stored on property. And we have 60,000 images, 6,000 pieces of wardrobe, close to probably 1 million pieces of paper in the collection. So we have quite a vast collection of stuff.
We met in high school in 1948, Humes High School in Memphis, Tennessee. Actually, we bonded on a music class in the 8th grade. Elvis came to school, brought his guitar. It was Christmas time. He got up and sang a couple of Christmas songs, and from that moment on, I knew there was something special about him. When Elvis got married, I was one of 14 people at his actual wedding. There were only 14 people in the room, Milton Pearl Suite at the Aladdin Hotel in Vegas. When I got married, Elvis was the best man at my wedding. I'm the only guy in the world that Elvis Presley was the best man for at a wedding. He paid for my entire wedding, and it was just fantastic. This is Gene Doucette we're talking with, and Gene was the guy sort of behind the scenes with Bill Ballou and all of Elvis's stage outfits and those famous jumpsuits that Elvis wore in Vegas and on the road. What I want to ask you, Gene, is that when Elvis started ordering outfits from you guys, I'll just generalize that.
Right.
Okay. Did other stars say, where did Presley get that? And they started calling.
During the period of time where his jumpsuits had really come into their own, where each one told a story, and it had reached the point where all the audiences would wait, okay, what is he going to wear this time? And he would come out and he'd flash the cape and he'd show off another new suit, whether it be a dragon or a sunburst or a peacock or whatever. At that point, it was at the height of popularity, and a lot of people went along trying to do the same kind of look. The Osmond brothers had their own cute set of versions of an Elvis Presley stage look. Liberace had one hand beaded. As a matter of fact, I was involved
Liberace?
in that. Liberace, as a tribute to Elvis while in Vegas.
Gene, Elvis loved the fact that Liberace was flamboyant, and his outfits were extraordinary on stage. Right. And Elvis knew that he had to have that too to be different.
Now, they both did elaborate costumes, but in two different directions.
Exactly.
Liberace's were for grand effects and astonishment, and it was always like watching fireworks go off on the 4th of July. Elvis, he took it a different way. It was very sensual, very masculine, and his suits told stories. Different feelings, different emotions. Some were very light and wonderful, and some were very deep and sensitive.
Here at the Moss Museum, I guess you could say, the Larry Moss, oh, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? The Moss Museum.
Sounds official.
Larry's an old friend of mine, and he acquires a lot of memorabilia, as you can see by where we're sitting today.
My dad was went to the same high school as Elvis and was friends with George Klein and that group all through their high school days, if you will. I sort of grew up being an Elvis fan. I owned the white suit that's worn at the end of the '68 comeback special, the If I Can Dream suit, which is now on display in Graceland. The pieces that you see behind me, certainly the costumes and the cape. That's certainly one of the most important pieces. And the cape and the belt together, they sort of go together as a pair. Down here on the corner of the display, if you look, there's a gold ES 295. That was Scotty Moore's guitar. And that's actually the guitar that was played when they went to Sun Studios and recorded That's All Right, Mama, back in the early days, if you will. That guitar belonged to Scotty and was used on the first 4 Sun records that were recorded by Elvis. And this cape is the one that he wore most of the time in that 1973 concert tour and period of time, and it is certainly what I think is the most important piece that's out there. It's certainly the cape that he wore more than any other of the capes. What I've got in my hands here is the American Eagle belt that went with the cape that's hanging on the wall behind us, and they came from Ed Parker, who was a karate teacher and confidant and friend of Elvis over the years, and they were given as gifts by Elvis to Ed Parker, and they hung in Ed's home. He passed away in 1991, and when the family started getting rid of things, that's how I came across it. And actually, Butch Bolston made the first contacts because he knew about my passion for Elvis and my desire to collect. There was at least some desire to make sure that they went into decent hands, the cape and the belt together. It is certainly one of the most recognizable items associated with Elvis, that whole American Eagle, Aloha Hawaii outfit, and the stage show that he did at that concert are certainly, they're considered, if not the best, certainly one of his best performances and are most recognized. And so in that regard, yeah, it's the most recognizable piece that I have, and it was because of Butch and his desire to make sure that the memories and the pieces and the mementos that came from Elvis and the costumes and the jumpsuits and things were all taken care of.
The first time that I went back, it was very emotional for me. Walk by the showcases with the wardrobe in them. I had a lot of Kleenex.
I think he's one of those people that it doesn't matter how many years it is that he's passed away, he'll have new fans. Every generation becomes a new set of fans. The phenomenon about how he displayed himself and showed himself in the act, with the jumpsuits in particular, it's become such an iconish thing. Each suit had a history and part of my life. And to walk in a room and see so much of my life all congregated in one spot, it's like when somebody fast forwards the tape on you, and you're trying to absorb all of the history all in one shot. It's a little devastating, but kind of nice. This is the biggest display of suits that they've ever done, especially so many different types all in one spot. Usually sometimes it's just punch-on suits, or here's an eagle suit or whatever, but this is like almost like a walking evolution.
Never in the history of the world has an entertainer had that adulation for 30 years after he passed away. I mean, Caruso didn't have it, John Wayne, Marilyn Monroe, Jimmy Dean, President Kennedy. Nobody has what he continues to draw upon the fans and draw people to Graceland. 800,000 people a year go through Graceland. It's unbelievable. He would have loved the fact they were still giving him support and were standing by him all these years, even though he's been gone for 30 years. I think he would have been extremely proud of his fan corps.
I truly believe that you could go to absolutely any country in the world, to a remote town of some kind, and hold up a classic Elvis Presley jumpsuit, and they will know who it is. They know exactly who it is. There's no doubt in anybody's mind. Thanks to the suits, thanks to Elvis, thanks to the work, I have my two best friends in life. And that's something that I'll always be very grateful for.
Elvis was probably the greatest joy in my life. He appreciated everything I did. I've met people all over the world. It was a terrific time.
Who knew we'd make stuff, you know, for the President of the United States, that we'd be doing things for commercials and movies and rock stars and movie stars and things. We never dreamed we'd be doing things like this, all because he wanted an Elvis costume. So it's turned into more than a dream come true. We've gone all over the world with it. We've met people and seen things that we never dreamed we'd ever see. It's been wonderful. Now that we're licensed with Graceland, I think it's going to just be bigger than ever. You know, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we keep doing more and more things that we just never dreamed would ever happen.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me over the years whether I ever got that most cherished thing, and that was one of Elvis's jumpsuit or some of his clothing items. And I tell them, nope, not yet, I'm still working on it.
Someday, someway, if there is a God, he's going to have that suit.
If I did receive one of those suits back many years ago when I first started this whole business, we wouldn't be sitting here talking today. It's been an amazing journey. There was only one Elvis, and there'll never be another Elvis.
with